Welcome, friends, to this episode of the Sync Your Life podcast. Today, I am joined by Dr. Calvin Ng. He is coming to us from California, usually sunny California, while I sit here freezing in the Midwest in Indiana. But I'm so glad we've been able to connect. I'm excited for our conversation today. We did have a chance to touch base a couple of weeks ago, and I really felt like that conversation could have gone on for hours because he speaks my language of functional medicine and making and taking a holistic approach to wellness. So this is something that I know my audience is looking for, and I think you're the person to address this. So welcome to the show, Dr. Ng. I'd love for you to sort of just kick us off by telling us your story, what brought you to doing what you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast and allowing me to have this platform and have this time to kind of share what I'm ultimately really passionate about in what I do. So, yeah, I'm a functional medicine practitioner. I practice a lot of natural healing modalities. I was trained traditionally as a chiropractor, and when I was in chiropractic school, I had a mentor in there who showed me a lot of things about functional medicine, about natural holistic healthcare that I really had no idea about. I mean, I always had a sense that, there was some sort of alternative way, but I really didn't know that chiropractors can actually get into that field. Um, and it was really profound. It really struck a chord to me. And after I saw it, I go, I can't go back. I need to practice this way. So, it was the rabbit hole that I went down, and I learned so much through it where I couldn't unlearn it. And it almost pissed me off in a sense, because I started to learn about how the traditional medical system, the traditional healthcare system was really how it got put together and how it is, still is right now. And I got to see the influence from the drug companies. I got to see the influence from politics. And that really didn't sit well with me. So I felt like for me, there was a calling for me to be intentionally disruptive. I always said that one of the things that I really want to do is disrupt the healthcare system. It's a big feat. I don't know how I was going to do it, but that was one of my passions. And so I just kind of, walked the path, and my mentor led me to another mentor. That mentor led me to another person. And sooner or later, I discovered that there's this whole field in functional medicine that there's, anywhere from MDs to naturopathic doctors to chiropractors to acupuncturists to nutritionists. There's a whole variety of people practicing this type of medicine that is really aligned with helping the body restore its normal function, which is the body is a self-healing machine. All right, that's what I believe in. Is God created this body to be self-healing, self-regulating, and we're supposed to have health. And to express health, we have to remove those roadblocks that get in its way. And those roadblocks could be anywhere from physical to biochemical imbalances to even emotional imbalances. And for some folks, they even get into the spiritual. Okay. So that's my idea of what holistic health is. And the way that I saw everything was through this lens of everything is connected. We cannot have a physical issue without having a biochemistry imbalance. We cannot have a biochemistry imbalance without some emotional components to them, and vice versa. So that really intrigued me, and I really saw how this made an impact on people's lives when I went to shadow at doctors' offices, and those patients would tell me that this doctor is amazing. The doctor who practiced functional medicine, the patients would say, this doctor is amazing. This person cares. This person listens to me. This person addresses my root causes and my concerns. They are the ones who actually are making a huge difference and taking the time and energy, right, to help them live a healthier life. And when I went to a traditional chiropractor's office And there's nothing against traditional chiropractic, which is basically what most people understand what it is you just come in for 2 to 5 minutes, right? And then you put your face down in the hole, you lay on the table, and then you get adjusted, right? You get your back cracked, and then you're out of there. So that's kind of what traditional chiropractic is thought of. So, when I went to those places, I didn't see that. I didn't feel that energy. I didn't sense that from the people. I'm not saying that they're not getting great care. I'm just saying that was not something that I wanted. I wanted something deeper. I wanted to have a more profound impact. Um, so that's kind of how I started on this journey, and how I discovered functional medicine.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I mean, I've had my own story that led me to functional medicine and taking a functional approach, which I've shared on the podcast before, so I won't go into a lengthy story, but the highlight version of it is, and I think what will help us connect today is my story, right? And it's very similar. Like, I can look now at my functional medicine doctor and say she ultimately changed my life. I had been a guinea pig in the modern medicine system for years. I mean, I had 4 neck surgeries. I did Botox for migraine. I did anti-seizure IV infusions. I did all these modern pharmaceuticals that led to kidney stones and led to other issues. And nobody was willing to look at my body as a whole, or even my endocrine system and my hormones. Like, it was just like, oh, your head hurts, let's look at your head, right? Or oh, your brain's normal, so you must be fine. Like, it makes you feel crazy. It made me feel like I was going insane. It wasn't until I walked into a functional medicine doctor's office, I was really at a breaking point, right? Like a total breaking point. And my best friend said, you got to try one more person. So I went to this functional medicine doctor. She did testing on me that I'd never had done before. She took me off of all pharmaceuticals cold turkey. She put me onto natural supplementation based on my deficiencies, my nutritional deficiencies, and my hormone imbalances. And within 4 months, I was a completely different person. And so I am that person that you're talking about who says, this doctor has changed my life. This approach has changed my life. And I thought it was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like, when I first heard about functional medicine, I was like, oh, this is going to be expensive. This is going to be a waste of my time. I've already seen the top headache specialists in the country. Like, how could this possibly be helpful for me? And in the end, it is obviously, it's why I now have the podcast. It's why I now teach what I teach, because it has been so profound for me. So I made some notes as you were talking. I mean, I love what you have to say about being intentionally disruptive and making sure people are aware of the fact that everything is connected. Everything in the body is connected. And it's important to look at everything from lifestyle to everything, not just these sort of silos of the body. So I want to get more into that, but to make sure that we sort of kick off the foundation here, I want you to sort of tell us the way I see functional medicine is, I always call it root cause medicine or proactive wellness as opposed to reactive wellness. I will say right here from the get-go that I'm a believer in a little bit of both. Like, I lie somewhere on the middle of the spectrum. I have a traditional medicine that I fill at a pharmacy for migraine pain when I need it, but I also have a whole library full of natural supplements and things that I believe in on the natural end of the spectrum as well. So I like to say there is a need for both, but I wish that more people embraced this sort of functional approach. So how would you define, if you were saying, dictionary definition, how would you define functional medicine as opposed to traditional medicine?
Yeah, such a good point there from what you made there, and let's expand on that. So traditional medicine is, and it could be, and I'm often careful to say this because I don't want to put um, a bad connotation or at least a bad association in people's head, but we do have to take it for what it is. And traditional medicine has really been not about healthcare. It's about sick care. It's really about maximizing profits in the pharmaceutical world. And if we look at, and this is what evidence base is all about. So in traditional medicine, the standard of practice is like, well, I am going to use standardized procedures that are based on research and evidence, and I am going to use that, and I'm pretty much not coming outside of the box. Well, that's great, but most of the research, I think the statistics are something like 96% of the research of medical research is about medicine, so drugs, pharmaceuticals, and devices. 96%. And about 4% is about actual health prevention, like disease prevention. And you have about 86% of those studies funded by drug companies. So if, let's say, me and you decided to start a company, right? And we started let's say we started a product for water, right? And we say this is the best water ever, new discovery, right? We found this water where there's no human has touched it. It's unadulterated. And we go to the market and we sell this water. And we say, we need some peer reviewed, evidence based like data to back up our water actually makes a difference in people's lives. And so we go and fund the research, right? And we fund the research. And things pop up on the research. And we say, hey, you know what, statistician, we want to use this number instead of this number because it just makes it pop more, right? It blows it up. Or, you know what, it wasn't the result that we wanted. So we want to use this other metric of measure, and that's going to make it more significant. So there's a lot of that happening. And so the whole goal for these companies to fund research is not to find out the truth. It's really to maximize their profits because they have a fiduciary responsibility, right, to their shareholders. And so this is what they need to do. This is what they're supposed to do. And I'm not saying it's wrong, right? But what they're not looking at is, well, how do I help humanity become healthier? What it really is it's about, okay, when someone comes in to a doctor's office, a physician's office, they get an average of about 7 minutes with them. And in those 7 minutes, they are supposed to examine them, diagnose them, and then prescribe them something. So in those 7 minutes, right, you're supposed to basically know all about their health and understand the underlying cause. What the patient comes in and says, what is wrong with me? I have all these symptoms and I got 7 minutes with you. You're supposed to take your stethoscope out and listen to my heart. You're supposed to take some deep breaths. Let me look at your abdomen. Let me poke around. And okay, looks like your lab work says this, right? Your cholesterol's high. Your blood sugar is high. Your blood pressure is elevated when we took it. So therefore, I'm going to prescribe you some sort of medication to lower those values, to lower your blood pressure, to lower your blood sugar, to lower your lipids. And so, in my opinion, that's not true medicine. In my opinion, that's just sick care. That's Band-Aid care. Because when you are prescribing that medication to lower their symptoms, you are not asking the question of why that symptom is there in the first place. So I tell people, it's like there's a fire in your body and there's smoke. And what traditional medicine is really good at is clearing the smoke. But it's not clearing the fire, and it's definitely not clearing the arsonist that's causing the fire. So functional medicine has a different approach. Where functional medicine and natural holistic doctors look at is, well, what is the function of the body? What is not functioning correctly? And if it's not functioning correctly, then that means things might break down. So if things break down, they might be called XYZ symptom. So I tell people that when they come in, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they have a headache if they have gut issues, if they have emotional issues like anxiety and depression, I tell people you can walk in with any diagnosis, any label that you want, and those are just labels on you. Because traditional medicine was taught that I need to examine a patient, figure out what's going on. I need to put a label on them so that I can get reimbursed for whatever this diagnosis is through the insurance company. So healthcare is ruled by drug companies and insurance companies. That's how medicine is being taught and approached. And so for a lot of functional doctors, right, they don't use drugs, or they don't use drug therapy that much. And also, a lot of them don't take insurance, and the patient pays out of pocket. So already the paradigm has shifted. So when you come into a functional medicine doctor's office, most likely, right, it is all about for 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 most people, you're getting testing done. And I always say this is if you're not testing, you're guessing, right? So if you go to your physician and say, "Hey, look, my stomach really hurts whenever I eat, right? I get this acid reflux. It burns like in the middle of my chest, right?" And they're gonna say, "Oh, okay, great. You have GERD, right? Acid reflux, GERD, okay? And then here's this ICD-10 code for it. Great. You take that. I'm gonna type it into the system. The doctor gets reimbursed for it. You have a legitimate diagnosis so that they can prescribe, some sort of drug for it to lower your stomach acid, like a Prilosec, like a proton pump inhibitor, right? And then you think that that is care. We think that is oh, you are making me healthier with this medication. But what it's not doing is addressing the root cause of why that's happening. You go to a functional medicine doctor's office, and with the same issues, with the same complaint, they're going to look at the entire body. They're going to look at what the organs are doing, what's not functioning right. Well, is there some sort of infection going on inside your intestines? Is there some sort of deficiency that you have where you're not able to adequately make stomach acid? Is there some sort of like liver congestion, liver failure, liver issue that we have missed? Right? They would look at the global picture and figure out, well, let's look at the biochemistry and figure out, and the physiology, and figure out, well, does one person why does this person have acid reflux? Why is that acid going back up into the esophagus? Is that what's really happening, or is there something else happening? So asking the question of why and doing the extensive testing is so important, and looking at how the body all functions together. And this is the biggest problem in conventional medicine, is that we have what's called specialists. We have the whatever ologist, the nephrologist, the hepatologist, right? And we have these specialists who we go to. And so your general practitioner will say, "Oh, you have gut issues. I can't figure it out. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna send you to the gastroenterologist. Oh, you have headaches and migraines that has been there for years and years. Well, I'm gonna send you to the neurologist." So you get how this game works. It's it's sending you to the person, right, who's a specialist, but that specialist knows a whole lot about very little. So I don't really like the term specialist. I don't really like the term that you're this expert in this one little thing of the human body. Because I go, if you're a neurologist, you better understand that gut function is so important for your brain health, right? Almost everybody knows now where most of the serotonin, right? A lot of neurotransmitters that affect brain function, that affect your mood and behavior, that comes from the gut. And if you have gut dysbiosis, which is basically an imbalance of gut bacteria, viruses, protozoa, parasites, fungus, right? These microbes these little bugs inside your gut. If you have an imbalance, then chances are this can affect your brain function. The heart and the kidneys are highly related, right? You have hormones that come from the kidneys that affect the heart. So when we go to a cardiologist, are they looking at the liver? Are they looking at the kidneys? Are they looking at these other things that could be to have an effect? We know that hormones can have an effect on your heart. Huge, right? I mean, in fact, that's pretty much how it upregulates and downregulates. It's with hormones. So does the cardiologist go and talk to the endocrinologist, which is the hormone doctor? Do they get on the same page and go, this is what I'm finding. What are you finding? Oh, you're finding this? What's really going on here? Right? Are they talking to the entire team? And usually they're not. And that's the biggest tragedy that I see is that when people come in, they say, hey, I've been dealing with this certain issue and I've been to this specialist or the specialist. And they just told me that either there's no cure for it. I'm going to have to put you on drugs long term. We're going to have to do surgery for it or surgery to explore what's going on, which is really scary for a lot of people. Or you're crazy. You're crazy. It's all in your head, and you need to see the psychologist, right? Or the psychiatrist, and you need to get prescribed some sort of antidepressant drug. And unfortunately, this is the standard of care. This is why the US spends the most amount of money in pharmaceuticals in the world. I think we make up like 2/3 to 3/4, okay, 66 to 75% of drug companies like profits is in the US. That is crazy. And yet we are, I don't know if we're the wealthiest nation anymore, but we are considered a very wealthy nation. We are considered a very developed nation. We are considered a very advanced nation. And when you think about the US, especially US healthcare, I would think that you would think like very highly of it. But unfortunately, that is the statistics, and that's what's happening in the world. And people, especially when it's 65 and older, they're almost guaranteed, right, that they're on some sort of medication long term. And what these medications are is they're not helping people thrive. They're not helping their function get better. They're not helping their body recover. What these things are they are the band-aids, and these band-aids come with a consequence, and these consequences, right, have are can be long term, they could be short term. Most likely they have long-term damage from them, and a lot of symptoms that people experience are actually what's called iatrogenic. Okay, and that is doctor or medical procedure induced pain or dysfunction. So you get hurt by the medical procedure or examination. So these drugs can cause damage too. Okay. So I'm not an anti-medicine guy because that saved my dad, right? That saved my dad when he had his health crisis. And so I'm not against medicine. I think that there is a time and place for medicine. I mean, emergency medicine is incredible. But health disease and prevention, right, is what we really need to target, and that's what the functional medicine people look at is testing the body and figuring out, well, what am I dealing with here. In order for me to make a correct diagnosis, I need to understand everything that's happening in the body, right? And I hope that even for a lot of functional medicine doctors who don't practice this way, but I practice this way, is I need to know all about your life physically, biochemically, emotionally. I need to know what kind of stress you're under. I need to know what your lifestyle looks like. I need to know how you eat, when you eat, how fast you eat. Okay. I need to know what you're constantly thinking about, what you're stressed about, what you're worried about, what you fear, what you're frustrated about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any sadness? So There's so much to go into, but we need to ask those questions. And that's what's called taking a history, which is medicine 101, is that you take a history of your patient. But how can we figure out how do we even connect with people on a deep level if we only have an average of 7 minutes? So I don't think that is proper medicine. I don't think that's how we do it, right? I think what it
Yep.
is that's just band-aid care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just sitting here nodding my head the whole time because I'm thinking about the fact that I spent years of my life in doctor's offices for that 7 minutes, right? Like waiting an hour for that 7 minute appointment and then just being
Oh
given
yeah.
a pharmaceutical and then a follow-up appointment where I would come back and repeat the process. And ultimately that is what led to me saying enough is enough. I've got to figure out what's going on underneath, and I've got to stop sitting in these doctor's offices. And my very first appointment with a functional medicine doctor was over an hour long. It's probably closer to 2 hours long. And
Mm-hmm.
it was, she wanted to know about everything having to do with my relationships and my sleep, and I'm sitting there thinking like, what is this? Like this is like, I've never had this experience before. And one thing that I want to make sure that we touch on, because this is a common objection that I get. So there's two parts to this. One is kind of coming back to what you were just talking about with these diagnoses. And I've talked about this before on the podcast. Diagnoses that are really just a label for the condition and sort of a summary of your symptoms, right? It just helps doctors identify this is what her symptoms are. It's really not a root cause. I fell victim to that. I mean, when I was going through the headache journey, that I had a doctor say, you have occipital neuralgia. And I was like, oh, finally an answer. And then you look it up online and you're like, oh, that's just like a definition of my symptoms, right? And then they're like,
Yeah.
you have PCOS. And I'm like, oh, finally an answer. And then I look it up and I'm like, oh, what is it? Like, so anyway, all that to say, I have so many women. I actually just talked to a woman this morning who has been given this PCOS diagnosis. I see this often. Obviously, my podcast speaks directly to women for the most part, teaching women their hormone health and their menstrual health. And I see this all the time where a woman goes to their OBGYN or their primary doctor. They complain of either painful periods, migraines, whatever the case is, irregular periods, whatever. And the doctor's first course of action is to put them on oral contraceptives. And they give them a diagnosis of, let's say, PCOS. The person feels like, oh, just like I did, right? This relief of, oh, finally an answer. And the doctor says, the only way to really get on top of this and to correct those symptoms, right, is to put you on oral contraceptives. Now, do those oral contraceptives help that? I've seen lots of women that oral contraceptives do help their painful periods. They do help their migraines or whatever. But then they give them a whole slew of other symptoms, right? And then for me, I believe that it affected my fertility. It affected a lot of different things. And so I see this all the time. And I feel like it's the battle that I'm constantly fighting, is to teach women that those diagnoses are not root cause, that those diagnoses are, and something like an oral contraceptive pill. I just learned yesterday that 39% of women who are on oral contraceptives are on it for reasons other than birth control. And so if we can speak to, this female that's listening who is on oral contraceptives for other reasons or who is dealing with menstrual health issues, who are just being told, oh, well, that blood work we did was normal. That doesn't mean optimal, as I like to say, right? Your blood work is normal, or here, let's go on this oral contraceptive pill. Just helping them understand that that is a Band-Aid. That is really just treating your symptom, and it's not getting to the root cause. Yes, there are root causes for hormone imbalances. There are root causes. We can look at blood sugar regulation. We can look at a lot of different things having to do with your nutrition and your lifestyle to see what could ultimately be contributing to that issue. But my second piece to this is, yes, I want to talk about this Band-Aid thing, but I also want to talk about the fact that the number one objection that I get from women, so they'll come to me with all these issues, painful periods, migraine headaches, I'm on oral contraceptives, I'm doing all the Band-Aids, right? I'm doing all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I say, okay, it's time for a functional medicine doctor, and I give them my story, right? And I tell them why they need this approach. I'm met with the answer, yeah, but isn't that out of pocket? Like, isn't that not covered on my insurance? And I just have to say briefly here, 2000, I think it was around 2009, 2010, my husband and I we were compiling our finances, and we realized that at that time in my life, when I was at the really peak of my pain, I was doing the Botox and the infusions and the medical treatment, like the urgent care visits for my migraine and all this stuff. We were spending over $10,000 a year with using doctors that were within our insurance network. So that was just on pharmaceuticals and treatments and testing and everything else, brain scans and whatever. And when I, now that I'm working with a functional medicine doctor and I have things under control, obviously my expenses are less because things are under control. But also, it's for me to do a hormone test on what I now know to be my root cause. To do that annually is like $300. To work with my doctor on an annual basis is around that amount, right? For me to have a couple of appointments per year. And so it's making this switch in the brain, right? It's making this switch from, okay, this is the way the modern medicine system is, and it's really not serving me. It's just treating my band-aids. It's giving me band-aids for my symptoms, and making that switch to almost an investment in yourself and saying, no, I do need to start looking at root cause, and I need to stop thinking about insurance and stop thinking about how this system works, and instead think about what is going to work for me. So I'd love for you to I know that was a lot, but I think it's combined into this. We get in this sort of hamster wheel of like, seeing the next doctor, seeing the next specialist, trying the next pharmaceutical drug, exactly like you just described. And we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting to the root cause. But yet what holds us back is thinking that we have to follow that system and thinking that we have to go with what our insurance covers as opposed to trying this alternative route. So any tips you have in that regard would be super.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to touch on 2 points here. Let me go back real quick on the hormone issues for women and females. Okay, and this pertains to men too, but especially women, because most likely if we think about hormone health, we're thinking about females for some reason. Yeah, except men are equally as guilty on that. But anyways, so for females, the biggest thing that I see with hormone balance is the ultimate root cause is usually liver congestion. And I paint this picture real quick for them, is that you need your liver to buffer out hormones. Basically, when you make estrogen, when you make hormones, okay, you need your liver to basically clear out those hormones and recycle them, all right, so you can use them again. But if your liver is congested, then you're going to have underlying issues with your hormones. So that is the biggest thing. And liver issues can cause migraines and headaches. Liver issues can also cause blood sugar dysregulation and vice versa. When your liver is congested, you're not making enough bile. So you're going to now pull in the gallbladder in that whole mix too. So liver and gallbladder issues. So not making enough bile, right? Well, is liver congestion. And when you do that, or when you're not making enough bile, you can't process, you can't push toxins out of your body adequately. You can't digest your food. Okay. So when that happens, it's almost like your whole system fails, right? So it's one little thing, but then there's a whole cascade of events that happen afterwards. And I tell people this: liver and gallbladder issues, right? Huge connection emotionally. In Chinese medicine, every organ has emotions that relate to it. Liver and gallbladder is in the wood element in Chinese medicine. And the wood element is emotionally anger, resentment, frustration, stubborn, depressed, emotionally repressed. So if you're emotionally repressed, you're hurting your liver. If you have resentment, if you have anger, if you constantly deal with frustration, if this is your emotional home and your emotional programming all the time, then we're burdening the liver, right? And we're further driving this issue. And so, yes, we can take DIM, I3C, right? These are supplements to help us with buffering out our estrogen. We can take things, the supplement that says, PCOS support on it. We can take those things. But my biggest concern, right, my fear is that even in the functional medicine world, that we get wrapped up into, okay, all right, this is what's happening. My hormones is imbalanced. I got this hormone test, and it shows that I'm like way off on all these things. My blood test came back and all these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use vitamins. I'm going to use herbs. I'm going to use minerals. I'm going to use mushrooms. I'm going to use all these things to bring balance back into the body. I'm going to bring balance back into those lab values. And what I tell people is, Let's not get too fixated on those numbers, because sometimes we're looking at how to basically band-aid that solution too. So sometimes I tell people, look, there might be a deeper issue, right, to this whole thing too, right? So that's what I really encourage people to look at, especially for females, is that for females, what's great about females is they have that underlying intuition. So when I talk about emotional issues and underlying emotional components, they get it, right? They get it right away. And I really invite people to tap into that, right? Whether you do inner work with, your childhood self, whether you see, some sort of practitioner that guides people through an emotional journey. You really have, I tell people that in order for you to heal your trauma, you got to feel your trauma. And those traumas may not be macro trauma. You may not have a huge, event, abuse and rape and those types of things. You may not have that. You might have just a micro trauma, which is, hey, so and so said this to me back in high school. It hurt my self-esteem. It derailed me in my studies. It really affected me, right? And it was something that seemed so silly and benign, but it stuck with them over time, and it became a behavioral thing, right? And it sticks with them. And all these things are what I'm talking about are in your subconscious, which is 90% of us, which is our programming, which means that it's part of our habits. It's part of who we are. So as much as we think logically, we can control things, we're governed by our subconscious. And it's important for us to tap into the subconscious and figure out what those emotional programming uh, layers are. Because if we're not, then the subconscious is where our health is. It's where our hormones are. It's where our self-regulatory system is. Okay. So that's just a real quick tidbit on hormones and relating back to liver and how I think at a higher level in terms of how everything relates to each other. And then back to the question about cost, right? Is the investment of holistic and natural medicine is that is exactly what I want people to think about, is getting you from that state of I'm just paying, this is just an expense, this is just a cost, to this is an investment. And I need people to think about this long term. I tell people that when I work with you, I am not looking at what's going to happen in the next 10 days, not in the next 30, not in the next 180 days. I'm looking at what's happening in the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years when I work with you, right? Like I'm thinking far, far, right? And because we need to have a long term perspective, because how we got here was not an overnight phenomenon, right? How you got to this place is not fixed by one little thing. So if I tell you that we can do this short little treatment and keep costs low and do this one thing and your symptoms are going to get better, I'm doing you a disservice. So I need people, and at the same time, I don't want to basically go like, hey, look, this is going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars, right? Um, I need to be able to work with you in the somewhere in the middle and come to an agreement on this. And that the biggest thing is understanding the mindset, which is the long-term perspective, which is this is really an investment towards your health. Think about it this way. If you were to not do this, if you were to not change the trajectory of your life, what would happen is you would spend, instead of more money, you can use your insurance, you can use your copay, but you are spending time. You are spending time, and time is your biggest asset, your biggest commodity. You are spending time to go to the doctor's office. You're spending time to go to these procedures, to get these testing done. You are wasting your time and you're spinning your wheels. And then over time, as you look back on it, you're going to go, gosh, I've spent, you might have spent this amount of money, but you have wasted a lot of opportunity. This opportunity is an ability, the time and the energy to spend time with your family, to have time and teach your kids, to raise your kids, to have a romantic relationship with someone, to have a deep relationship with a friend, to spend time to see your parents, right? Experience and travel the world. This is the opportunity cost. This is what we miss out on if we don't take action and control and take responsibility and ownership of getting our health better. So I tell people, unfortunately, I don't have a quantitative measure on life experience. I don't have that. I can't tell you what you're going to miss out on. I can't tell you what you're going to lose. But I think that if I were to give you a stack of money versus the experience, the love, the memories that you cherish with your family, your loved ones, right? Which one would you pick? You would pick the experience. So that is ultimately more valuable. We need to really prioritize here and figure out how are we going to do the things today that gives us that experience tomorrow. And if it is that you have to stop drinking your Starbucks, right, which is now like $6 every time, right, a day, right? If you have to cut out that expense to save up, then so be it. If you have to, if you have to not eat out, then do it, right? And it ultimately comes down to what you really want. So we do the things for the right reasons. And so when I have to tell people, I have to educate people on what those reasons are. Because if I just tell you, hey, look, yeah, it is going to cost a little bit more upfront, but it's going to be better long term, right? You're not going to understand how.
Yeah.
So you really need to understand the reasoning part behind that. So is to get into that investment mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we need to actually think about in everything, is how to be an investor in our wealth, in our health, right? In our time, because that's what it really is all about.
Amen to that. Yeah, for sure. I love that you said earlier, that females tend to be very sort of self-aware whenever something is off. I like to say that a lot of women know when their check engine lights are flashing,
Yeah.
but a lot of times, because we as women tend to be the ones who nurture, and kids come first and family comes first and other things come first, a lot of times those check engine lights can flash for quite a while before a woman will finally address it. And so that intuition is so key, but also, yeah, like understanding this idea that if something is off, right, like there comes like, for me, don't get to the point where you're 3 years in to a chronic journey, whatever that looks like for you, before you finally realize, wait a minute, I'm not getting anywhere with this. Like, I'm still not getting to the foundation of the problem. Instead, just say, you know what, line in the sand, I'm going to take that first step and go to that first appointment, or I'm going to do this testing that I haven't done before, or I'm going to do something different so that I can get to that root cause. I want to ask that question about, because I think it would be helpful for people to see. I mean, they've heard me say here that function, and you too, like that functional medicine doctors take the extra time, they get to know your lifestyle, right? They're looking at a lot of different factors. They're looking at the body as a whole. And I know every functional medicine doctor is also different. So there's that too. But I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what if I was to walk into your office, if I was a new patient of yours, what typically would you do first? Like, what is your approach as far as, intake and patient history and testing, and like, what does your typical journey look like with someone?
Yeah, absolutely. So when someone comes in and sees me, they bring in all the things. If they have lab work, I want to see those. I am going to take a very thorough history. Like I said, I want to know what went wrong, when it went wrong, where it went wrong, what happened before then, what was childhood like, what was the upbringing like, what was the dynamics between, your parents, your relationships, your siblings. I want to know all about that. And then I want to know, what do you know what potentially went wrong? And people are surprised. Like I would say that a lot of people actually would know. They go like, yeah, I know it was this one incident, or this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm constantly doing that's driving it. There's something. And I go, great. You know why. But I am gonna help you I'm going to help you figure out why of the why. Like I'm going to help you figure out what is the root cause of why you're doing that behavior that you already know about, right? So detailed history is very important, right? So I want to know all about their life, because when I know all about their life, I can figure out there's clues that in the history that it tells you pretty much what's going on here. And then we get into testing, okay? And then we like to do a lot of objective measures, which is going to be lab testing, okay? Or urinalysis or stool testing. However, I don't start there because, like you said, that mold test could be $400. That hormone test could be another $300. The salivary hormones test, right, can run up to whatever, right? Some people might have $1,000 tests that they come in with, and I go that for a lot of people might not be feasible. So I don't want to just jump into testing all these things yet. I want to figure out, well, what's the body telling me? So I tell people this is when people come in here, I'm really trying to communicate with your body. So your symptoms are your body's way of crying for help. The worse the symptoms, the louder the cry. If your body's crying for help and we're not listening to it, right? And it's continuing to get worse. Well, how do we actually listen to the body? How do we communicate with the body? So I utilize a therapy, a technique called applied kinesiology. Okay. And there's many techniques that kind of fall under it. Applied kinesiology is AKA muscle testing. Okay. And why do I use muscle testing? Is because muscles, we use your muscles like the keyboard. We use your body like a computer. And we apply that to your body to figure out what are the answers, right? What's the underlying dysfunction? What is not functioning correctly? So when we use muscle testing, this is why I tell people, I say, if I want to communicate with your conscious brain, which you understand is 10%, if I want to if I want to communicate with your conscious brain, I need to speak to you in English, Spanish, Chinese, French, right? This is language. This is logical. So, but that's only 10%. How do I tap into the 90%? And that 90%, your subconscious, or someone called it the superconscious, that that part of you is does not respond to English, right? But the language of the body is neurology. The language of the body is through your nervous system. So I need to communicate with your body through the language of neurology. So one of the best ones is muscle testing, because that is a biofeedback mechanism. I am utilizing the muscle test as a response from the body. I am seeing if the body is adapting by doing a muscle test. And it's not a measure of strength, it's a measure of adaptation. And when your body is not adapting to your external environment, you will have symptoms. You will break down. You're like the animal who's wounded out there, who can't survive. And so when you're in survival mode, or even if you're not surviving, you're for sure not thriving. So my whole goal is to figure out through muscle testing, what are the underlying issues in the body that are not functioning correctly? What are the things that are not adapting? And get those organs, get those systems to be adaptive, to be functioning correctly. I don't make any diagnosis. I don't put labels on people. I don't go, oh, look, we figured it out. It's IBS, it's SIBO, it's PCOS, it's Hashimoto's, right? I don't make those diagnoses because, again, there's an underlying cause, right? Even if someone has Hashimoto's and they have the autoimmune thyroid, and I go, what's driving it? Is there toxicity? Is there emotional imbalance? Right? Is there something else in the body that's driving an immune system dysregulation in the body that's causing your own immune system to attack itself? And it so happens that your thyroid is the weakest link. And now we call it Hashimoto's, right? But why is your thyroid a weak link in the body? Well, the thyroid is connected to your throat chakra, and your throat chakra is speaking your truth. Maybe you have a hard time speaking your truth your entire life. Maybe you've been suppressed your entire life by your parents, by other people. And so you just learn to live like that. And you can't stand up for yourself. And now later in life, when you're 30, when you're 40, right, you go to the doctor's office, whether they're functional or traditional, and they tell you, look, you got autoimmunity, you got Hashimoto's, right? So I bring people on that journey because when people come to me, they already have those diagnoses. They come to me and they say, I have Hashimoto's, I have IBS, I have SIBO, right? I have Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, I have PCOS. And they already know these issues. And I go, great. That's a great start. I'm glad you've done a lot of my homework, but it's time for me to take you a little deeper, right? So that's where I utilize muscle testing. And the great thing about muscle testing, I tell people, is it doesn't cost you anything more, right? I don't need to run a special test to a lab. I don't need to, get this requisition for you, right? We're going to do it right here, and then it's already covered. It's part of our experience. So when I dial in on the muscle testing and I find that, hey, look, you know what, there's something going on in your liver that's not working correctly, or there's something going on in your reproductive glands that I'm showing. And basically, I'm not saying that there's a disease there. What I'm saying is the energy of that is not working. Something's not working correctly. Okay. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't have a microscope. But if we want to dig a little further, if something's not making sense, well, let's run this specific test, right? If your adrenals, if your thyroid, if your hypothalamus, pituitary, right, are not working, then I might run a salivary hormone test, right? If I find that there's gut issues, then I might run a stool analysis, a urinalysis. I might run a total toxicity test and check for mycotoxins, mold toxins, plastics in the body, heavy metals, and things like that, right? But I don't want to just, I don't want to take a shotgun and just, shoot, right? I want to really be the surgeon here and be the sniper here and hone down specifically on what's going on.
Yeah. I love that the analogy of sort of figuring out that weak link, like what is, and I always, when I'm teaching the endocrine system and how hormones work together, I use the analogy of a four-legged chair. We talk about what's the weakest leg of your chair, right? Like what's the one that's causing the whole chair to falter? So I like that analogy. And I'm thinking too, like, once you do that muscle testing and you're aware of that weak link for someone, what are the most common things that you're finding as far as, whether it's the top issues that you see, or just also what are the top lifestyle approaches that you're taking with people based on those weak link assessments?
Yeah. So a few things. The number one thing, I like how you mentioned lifestyle, because the number one thing is really lifestyle. It's what we do. So I take people off of the foods that is inflaming their system, right? I take people off of the food sensitivities that I might find, okay? Things that they may not be aware of, which is beyond just gluten, dairy, sugar, right? These could be other things like nightshades. These could be like rice, could be some parts of even animal meat sometimes, right? There's very specific food sensitivities that people deal with. And I say that's not a root cause, right? But just know that that is causing an inflammatory event in the body. And if your body can't handle this certain type of food, we're just perpetuating it. We're making things worse. So let's take some of that load off your body and not eat those foods that inflame your system. All right. And we'll reintroduce it later. And then the other thing is seed oils. A lot of people come in and they're unaware of the impact of seed oils, bad oils that they use, right? So people can look this up, the Hateful Eight, or I think that's what it's called, right? Those seed oils that cause a lot of inflammation in the body, okay, that cause metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance. And when people have metabolic dysfunction or insulin resistance, basically an inability to control your blood sugar, our immune system, our immune modulating effects are actually dampened. And so that's why we don't heal. And our immune system don't just help us fight off germs and bugs and get us through illness and all that stuff. It's your immune system works all the time, and your immune system is for repair. So if you're not repairing your and recovering your body, then you're going to become sick, right? So that is a big issue. Metabolic dysfunction coming from seed oils. There's other things that cause it, processed sugars, right? But seed oils are one of those things where a lot of people don't realize, and it's hidden in so many things, right? You get the person who brings it, hey, look, this is plant-based, organic, vegan, like bar, and I go, great, there's seed oils in it. Right? This is not good. Or they go in and do their alternative, right? This is a healthier version of this other thing, right? This is a healthier sauce. Great, but this has seed oils. Okay, I don't cook. I don't eat. I eat out a lot, and I go, okay, well, your restaurant is going to use the cheapest, lowest quality oil that they can use, and even though you're eating something that's relatively clean, you think, right? It can still be laced with these toxic ingredients. So that's another thing. And then the third thing I would say is I totally forgot. It'll come back to me. Oh,
Yeah,
it was
you're
so
fine.
good. I was trying not to lose it too.
Yeah, well, it makes sense.
Um,
It makes sense that you would start with removing inflammation, like removing things that are causing more inflammation in the body, right? So, and seed oils is something that I just spoke about on my recent podcast with a breast cancer survivor. We were talking about
mm,
reducing inflammation, and we were talking about different things pertaining to that, and we talked about seed oils there. But it is so common. I mean, my daughters, I have a 2 and 6 year old, and they're always asking about, they want snacks, like like their friends
yeah,
have snacks. Their friends eat potato chips, right? And I'm like, well, here's the thing. Like there's only like 2 brands of chips out there that don't have
right.
seed oils, and it's so hard. And it's kind of like what you said at the beginning, I'm in the same boat as far as you can't unlearn what you now know, right? And so
Yeah,
as a nutritionist now, there are times where we have friends that'll say, oh, can't they just have the snow cone this one time, or can't they just have this the one time? And I'm like, here's the thing, like, I know what's in it, I'm not a fan of
yeah,
red dye. It's just not going to happen. But at the same time, balancing that with societal norms and wanting to make sure that my girls don't have a sort of stigma around food. And it's such a balance, right? It's like a balance beam that we're constantly walking and navigating. But
it really is.
I love that you start with reducing that inflammation, because and that's actually where I wanted to take this next before we wrap up, is just understanding. And I hope that maybe we can bring you back for another deeper dive into women's hormones and nutrition and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm,
But the average traditional medicine doctor is getting 1 semester or less of nutrition training. And
mhm,
that nutrition training that they're receiving, if it's anything like the initial course that I took on nutrition, which was just sort of a blanket course that I took, the cover of the nutrition book when I was in that class was a photo of bread, like a photo of like 17 varieties of bread, and it was a book on nutrition. So I'm just going to say, I'm not judging, but I'm just saying that the average doctor, traditional doctor, is only getting a semester of nutrition, and it's basic nutrition, and it's most likely, in my guesses, outdated. And so
mm,
that's the other thing that I love about functional wellness is it's, you're looking with a microscope at, nope, this contains a seed oil, we know this is inflammatory, right? Like, and it's not about making people obsessively crazy over what they're eating, but it's helping them become aware that their body, Sean Stevenson talks about this on his podcast, and in his book he talks about, we are what we eat. Like, the cells of our body are literally created by the food that we're eating. And so it totally makes sense to say, you have something going on, your energy is off, your body is inflamed, there's, like you said, you talked about the fire and the smoke and the signaling and the body communicating those symptoms. Let's figure out what that is. But in the meantime, let's reduce this inflammation and really cut back and give your body the breeding ground to heal. So I love that that's the starting point. We could go deeper into that, but for the sake of
mhm.
today, I want to make sure that we're mindful of our time. And so I want to
Oh,
ask you my final 2 questions here. One is, I want to make sure that people listening, if they are open to navigating a functional wellness journey and, embracing that as sort of a new step in the right direction, what would you say would be the first step in doing that?
so I would suggest that someone really works with a practitioner, right? A holistic practitioner, a nutritionist like yourself, a doctor who, is like myself, who practices this way. And the reason, and I know that that could be costly for a lot of people. Or just say, hey, whatever you can do, make the investment, even if you just go once or twice, or you spread your appointments out. I really encourage people to work with a practitioner because I think about it this way. Let's say, let's say your kid wants to be, and let's say they're really good athlete. They're like a really good baseball player. And you see the potential. Everybody says like this kid has potential to go into the pros. And and what you got to do is, well, you're going to have to hire a coach. You're going to have to hire a mentor. You're going to have a whole team around this kid, right? As they grow up, so that he can become an amazing baseball player, to tap into that potential, right? To extend their potential even further. So any great team, great athlete, great, really anybody has mentors and coaches, right, who guide them along in the journey. They still have to do the work, but you need guidance. So for people who really are invested in this route and want to change the trajectory of their health and want to continue to improve their health, they need to work with a practitioner. They need to have some sort of guidance. They need to figure out what is not working right in the body. Like I said, if you're not testing, you are guessing. So if you go to the vitamin store and you go, wow, all 5,000 of these bottles here, they they sound really good. Everything sounds like it can help me. Should you buy those 5,000 bottles of supplements? No. So what you need is you need individualized care. We need customization because there is no one size fits all approach, just like diets, right? We have so much argument about what is the best diet because there's no one size fits all approach. We just have what works for you pretty much. And so we need to figure out what's not working right in your body and what's not working right for you. So my biggest thing is really I is telling people like, look, it's you really have to have a coach. Why? Because your body, we need to treat our bodies like the elite athlete. Because it is. I mean, you ever think about it? You wake up every day. How does that even work? Right? You wake up every day and your body heals. It's amazing. It's amazing. So we need to really have gratitude for ourselves and for our own bodies and really look inside our bodies and go, wow, like this is such an amazing machine. Like this is a functioning at an elite level, right? You are like the Ferraris of cars, right? And so I have to treat it this way. I have to see it this way. I have to give myself that self-worth, which is another thing is self-worthiness, right? It's really understanding that you are worth, right, the high level care, right? So that's the first place I would tell people to start.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've said it a million times, right? Like there's a reason why so many people say, including myself, that a functional medicine doctor has changed their life, right? There's a reason that you hear that often. And people like me who are saying that are not complaining of the cost entailed, because when you have a life-changing experience and you can get to the root cause and you can have health freedom, like you feel like you have that energy back and you feel like you're yourself again and you feel like you can be the person that you need to be for your family and for your your loved ones. Like it is such a life-changing thing that it makes you wonder. Like it's kind of like when we got a dog, right? We got a dog when my husband and I first got married, and I literally stressed out about the dog for months because I was like, what if there's a lot of hair? Like what if I'm gonna have to clean up all the shedding, and like what if, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to find somewhere to board him, and like you have all these fears when it comes to doing something new, right? When it comes to the analogy I'm trying to make here is when you decide to make that switch from maybe traditional medicine to functional medicine, or even just seeking functional medicine as an alternative and as an addition to modern medicine. And when you do it, you have all these fears and objections and misconceptions. And then in the end, like, I remember when we put my dog down a couple of years ago after a long life, I was just like, I can't believe I ever thought about not doing this, right? Because he was so life-changing for us, right? Modern functional medicine has been so life-changing for us, but I think we resist something that's different because it's something different. And so I love that you said that. And I also want to say too, that for my women listening, I always tell women, especially because they usually come to me with what they believe to be hormone imbalance issues, right? Whether it's having to do with oral contraceptives or whatever, or just feeling like they can't lose the weight, et cetera, et cetera. And I like to tell them that, the best way to find a functional medicine practitioner, number one, is through word of mouth. Start asking friends that you might know who are already seeing one. I feel like that's a great way of knowing and getting that credibility. But also, a lot of cities have apothecaries. And I've found that apothecaries can be a really great resource for finding a functional medicine doctor. If an apothecary is near you, call them, ask them, which doctors do you work with the most that are in this area? I like to tell women that if it's hormone related, a lot of times doctors who are working with bioidentical hormone replacement therapy tend to know a little bit more about hormone health. And so asking those types of questions, right? Asking for referrals, asking a friend, calling those apothecaries, because I've found, unfortunately, that if you do a Google search for functional doctor near me, it might still not be a holistic functional approach, right? It can just be marketing to get you to go to that doctor. So, okay, I'll make sure to link up in the show notes some extra tips as well about how to find a functional medicine doctor. I want to make sure we also direct people to you and where they can find you. But just to wrap us up today, I'd love for you to just tell us in one sentence or maybe two, what do you wish most people knew about a holistic approach?
Oh, wow. I wish that people knew that the holistic approach is really a long-term journey, and that what it really is all about is living intentionally. It's about being an intentional human and living intentionally so that not only are you healthier, but we leave this world a better place.
Excellent. Awesome. Okay. Dr. Ng, please tell us, where can people find you if they wanted to reach out to you with questions or, whatever you want to offer up. I'd love for people to have a way to find you on social media and otherwise. So please give us all your details.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I'm doing a lot of activity on my Instagram. I'm posting a lot of like material that is actually just free material that I give away. On there, you'll also figure out where you can subscribe to a newsletter that I will do, and that's really the best way that you can find me. My practice is in Southern California. If you find me on social media and you're like, hey, I'm in Southern California, I want to come give you a shot, just hit me up, DM me, let me know where you came from, right, that you were on this podcast, and then I will make sure that there will be a discount towards your first appointment.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link up your Instagram and your newsletter and everything in the show notes so people can just swipe up to have that information at their fingertips. But I just want to say thank you for coming on here, for being, such a sort of, what did you call it? I have it written down here. You said an intentionally disruptive human being out there to really make sure people are aware that this exists, that this is real medicine, that proactive wellness is so worth our time and our investment. So I'm grateful for meeting you. I hope I can have you back I wanted to do this sort of general dive into functional medicine, but I want to have you back to dive even deeper into women's hormones. When you started talking liver, I was like, oh, we could totally take this podcast in a whole other direction, but we'll save that for a second episode. So thank you, my friend, so much for being here. And I know we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.